Let's take a trip in a trailer. No need to come back at all. Let's take the powder to Boston for chowder. Let's get away from it all.
Everywhere we go, we're surrounded by history. For example, we have this historic tobacco barn right on the campsite we're staying right now. But we wanted to tell you about a place we went about 2 weeks ago. We were in Central Virginia, near Lynchburg, Virginia, and we stayed there for 2 weeks. And while we were in the area, Sally looked at the Lynchburg Traveler's Guide.
That's right.
Right. And we said, what can we see here?
There's so many historical areas, they put it in a guide so that you won't miss any. It's great.
And so while she looked up and said, here are some things to look at. And we just wanted to share some of those with you. First of all, we went to
the D-Day Memorial.
The National D-Day Memorial,
Wow.
which is a monument dedicated to those who lost their lives in D-Day, Operation Overlord, which was the turning point of the Second World War.
It really was.
So we went there, and it was very moving, very powerful place. From there, we went to the Thomas Jefferson Poplar Forest. Everybody has heard of Monticello, and they don't often realize that he had a country getaway that he built.
He had a problem. People would come. He was so famous that people would come and just uninvited walk up to the door.
They would do that in Washington with all the presidents, early
did.
presidents, but then when he escaped to Monticello, they'd come right up
They
to his
just
house,
followed him.
knock on the door, or knock on the window. They said that one lady was so persistent knocking on the window, it broke his window. So
and
he said,
was very gracious about it, which I don't know if I would have been.
so he had to get away, find a place where he
Yeah.
could just retreat. And he built this small house in...
His father-in-law had given him a lot of land when they married, but he hadn't done anything with it until he decided
was
to
president
build
near
a
the end of
real
his-
getaway.
near the end of his presidency, when he decided to build this home in Bedford County, Virginia, and make it his country getaway. So
Yeah.
that's the Poplar Forest.
We'll show you that.
And then I went hiking at Appomattox Courthouse National Historical Park.
Which we had visited last year before we were really doing any of these videos, and it was wonderful.
And so they have a hiking trail through the park, and I went and hiked that, which took me past the same buildings that we saw last year. And
A recreation of the village at the time of the surrender. It was really a nice place.
And so I took some pictures and some video of that we'll share with you. And then we went south a little ways to...
The middle of nowhere.
yes. It's the Patrick Henry estate where he retired and lived out the rest of his life, called Red Hill. And his gravesite is there. And after we finally found it in the middle of nowhere, we really enjoyed our stay there and visiting that.
They've done a lot of improvements to it. There was a very nice video of his life, and the docent there, although very young, was very knowledgeable about him, and it was really it's worth looking in the middle of nowhere.
Absolutely. So we just have a little 5-minute presentation here to show you those things that we saw, and we call it our magical history tour. Why is the D-Day Memorial in Little Bedford, Virginia? This statue commemorates the Bedford Boys. Bedford lost a larger percentage of its population in the D-Day invasion than any other city. 2/3 of its soldiers who stormed the beach that day died. Many Americans received the French Legion of Honor Award for their role in the liberation of France.
A lovely sculpture garden held busts of important Allied leaders. This is British General Monty Montgomery.
The park has 450 informative plaques like this one throughout the grounds.
This is the primary monument surrounded by the flags of the Allied nations.
Beneath the monument is an area that represents the battle for the beach. Pneumatic jets simulate artillery fire. On the far left is a landing craft. It's had to navigate around those sharp defensive obstacles called hedgehogs. In front of the far one, we see a soldier wading ashore with his rifle above his head.
At the edge of the water, a soldier has fallen just as he made it to shore.
Then there's a soldier racing across the sand with an army medic right behind him.
And finally, on the far right, we see a group of soldiers struggling to climb the cliffs. You cannot visit this memorial and not be tremendously moved by the sacrifice of these men.
Thomas Jefferson's country home, on the other hand, was a much more serene and tranquil visit. It's called Poplar Forest because of the huge tulip poplars that dominate the area.
We took a guided tour of the old house. This is our guide. The dining room is being restored now. They're working on the elaborate cornices just beneath the huge skylight.
Jefferson himself designed this surprisingly modern-looking chair. It's very comfortable. I got to sit in it.
The windows aren't original, but they are imported hand-blown glass, so they are virtually identical to the originals.
Jefferson loved his octagons. This whole house is 8-sided. As is his necessary, that is, the privy, the outhouse.
So we've gone from World War II to early Americana and now to the Civil War. This is a reconstruction of the courthouse itself. It serves as the park's visitor center. The home where the surrender was signed is nearby.
This is a modest home in the village.
In real life, the line of surrendered Confederate artillery stretched for half a mile.
There's a small Confederate cemetery nearby that holds the bodies of those slain during these last days of the war. As I was reading the plaque, I noticed a little friend reading with me. Can you see him? There he is.
And back to the Revolution. After serving as Virginia's governor for 5 terms, Patrick Henry retired to Red Hill and lived there until his death. We got to see a reconstruction of his home built on the original foundation.
This is his law office, and most of it is the original building.
And this is the slave quarters.
This Osage orange tree was mature when Patrick Henry lived here. It's 350 years old. It's the largest tree of its kind in the United States, and it's so broad and sprawling that some branches have to be supported with posts and cables.
And so we close out our history tour. We're so glad you could join us.